Destroying the first Death Star made Luke Skywalker into the Rebellion's most renowned hero within the Alliance overnight in the eyes of just about everyone, with the sole exception of one Rebel pilot. Having been in the sickbay during the Battle of Yavin, Jal Tay Neve missed out on the action and was livid that the farm boy who ended up using his very own X-Wing starfighter for the attack was now deemed the greatest pilot ever. Such a sentiment drove the longtime veteran crazy, who despite having performed 31 missions for the Rebellion with 80 TIE kills in his record, was now being completely overshadowed by someone who had only accomplished landing one lucky shot. This left Neve in an erratic state that worsened with his daily drinking. He became so unstable as a result that during a false alarm of an impending attack on the Rebel stronghold on Yavin, Neve drunkenly took the controls of an X-Wing and barely made it out of the hangar, before crashing it immediately upon takeoff outside. As a side note, the Empire did keep a blockade around Yavin 4 for about 6 months after the Death Star's destruction to prevent the Alliance from fleeing with its largest vessels and equipment, but smaller craft were able to bypass it for out-of-system missions. Besides conducting bombing raids and intelligence gathering on Rebel leaders and personnel, Darth Vader kept his forces back from conducting a full attack until his new Super Star Destroyer was constructed. On the other hand, the Emperor himself was more concerned about stamping out uprisings on loyal worlds that followed the destruction of the battle station and the Senate's dissolution than the small rebel band that remained on Yavin, as well as prioritize reorganizing Imperial command that had been left in disarray as a result of so many high-ranking officers perishing before going back on the offensive. Nonetheless, this last act had Neve be brought before the rebel leadership that still remained on Yavin 4. Recognizing his immaculate record of past service for the Alliance and value as a pilot, the Council put up with the disrespect he showed them, but understood he now posed more as a liability than an asset while he was in his current state. Rather than a court-martial, the Council chose to assign him to a recruiting mission on the planet Dubrava instead. Neve accepted the reassignment only because it meant he would no longer have to put up with them. Before leaving for his new mission, he stopped by Wedge, who tried to knock some sense into his fellow pilot, revealing how Luke was the reason the Council had only given him a slap on the wrist over his behavior. This only aggravated Neve, however, believing it meant he was now supposed to be personally grateful to Skywalker on top of everything else. Hoping to satisfy Wedge, Neve met up with Luke and sarcastically thanked him, overly praising him as a pilot, telling Luke that he'd make sure that even his own children and the future children will be grateful for him just as much as he was. Around this same time, Darth Vader had confirmed that the identity of who had destroyed the first Death Star was indeed Luke Skywalker. Having spent the 2 months after the Battle of Yavin secretly seeking this information out through his personal spies, it was only when he cross-verified past findings with the confession of a rebel pilot earlier captured by bounty hunters on his payroll that he understood that it was without a doubt the truth. Realizing the danger of the Emperor learning this fact as well, Vader made haste to eliminate all witnesses that were present to the rebels' confession, ordering his troops to execute all the bounty hunters he had previously hired, with only one barely surviving the sudden onslaught in the end. Elsewhere, Neve was carrying out his new assignment of finding potential pilots for the rebellion by spending all of his time drinking at the local bar. When a kid named Bobek who sought to join as a pilot finally approached him, Neve drunkenly and sarcastically praised the youth for his decision to the rest of the patronage. Hoping to teach Bobek an important lesson, he proposed that the aspiring rebel pilot undertake a test first. Bringing him outside the cantina, Neve had Bobek blindfolded before ordering him to take steps based on his commands. Finding a trapdoor near the rear of the cantina, Neve kept ordering Bobek to move until he finally tricked the young man into falling right into it, having him get drenched in filth and feces. Satisfied in getting his point across, Neve returned right back to getting another drink at the bar. Later, during one of his drunken stupors, a woman overheard him mention the name Skywalker and how he was currently on the planet Jezbina. Remembering seeing that name from a wanted list and believing it belonged to a smuggler or murderer on the run, she informed the local bounty hunter guild of her discovery. When this information reached Vader, he sent his Imperial forces to investigate the source, ordering them to eliminate anyone who would have known that Luke was currently on the planet Jezbina so he could track him down personally without interference. When the informant realized the troopers were attempting to kill her, she fled back toward the bar where she had first overheard the name, trying to figure out why she herself was marked for death. There, Neve told her that Skywalker was the pilot who had destroyed the Death Star, before she was blasted right in front of him as the troopers finally caught up with her. Not taking any chances of the information being leaked, the stormtrooper squads decided to kill everyone within the cantina by blasting and burning down the entire place. As the other patrons desperately attempted to fight back or escape, Neve was able to barely survive by crawling through the wreckage and hiding within the same trapdoor he had tricked Bobek into before. As the smoke from the fires settled, Neve finally got out from under the trapdoor, believing enough time had passed for him to be safe. Unfortunately for him, 2 stormtroopers were left behind to make sure the fires didn't spread, and found himself at their mercy. But right as they were about to blast him, one of them got shot from behind by Bobek, who had returned with blaster in hand. The other trooper was able to react quickly enough to get a shot off on the kid before Neve was able to jump him, beating the trooper into the swamp and forcing him under the water until he drowned. When Neve returned back to Bobek, the kid was barely alive, only able to mutter a few more sentences. Asking him why he came back with a blaster, Bobek confessed that he initially did so, hoping to kill him for pulling the trick on him earlier, before changing his mind and using it on the stormtroopers, as the rebellion was more important than either of them. As Bobek died in his arms, Neve snapped back to reality and left the scene, ashamed of his earlier behavior. Seeking to warn Luke of the Empire knowing he was on Jezbina after being the one responsible for revealing the fact, Neve took off hoping to reach him in time. To his dismay, he was too late, getting ripped out of hyperspace as he approached his coordinates and barely avoiding his starfighter fully crashing into the Interdictor Star Destroyer as it scraped against its hull, damaging his weapons systems in the process. Knowing he was useless in his damaged ship, Neve was able to avoid getting shot down by the nearby TIE fighters as he flew down towards Jezbina's surface. Upon landing his ship in the outskirts of the planet's capital, Neve was able to reach Luke, who was being sheltered by the natives as they braced for the arrival of Vader and his stormtroopers. Relieved to find Skywalker alive, Neve told him about his renewed spirit of fighting again for the right reasons, to protect others and not just for the glory that came in doing so. But before he could continue, he was cut off by Vader, who had just arrived outside of their shelter along with his troopers. As the Sith Lord readied to enter, the rest of the people at the capital crowded outside around his men, attempting to provide the hero of the rebellion a chance to escape. Seeing an X-Wing nearby that Luke had used to arrive on, Neve sprinted towards it without saying another word and took off, leaving both Skywalker and the natives behind. Believing that he had fled the scene to save his own skin, the natives denounced him as a traitor and a coward. Refocusing his attention back on Luke, Vader demanded the people of Jezbina hand him over, otherwise he would order his troops and Star Destroyer overhead to begin firing upon them. Although the people refused to stand down, Luke didn't want them to give their lives for him and instead surrendered himself over. Back in orbit, Neve flew towards the interdictor that Vader had arrived in. Seeing only a single X-Wing fighter engaging his Star Destroyer, the captain of the vessel decided to give his TIE Fighter wings some fun by allowing them the pleasure of taking out the sole rebel. As the hangar bay underneath opened its shields to allow the TIEs to exit, Neve used this moment to skillfully fly past the Imperial fighters as they flew out, blasting those in his way and entering through the blast door shields before they could close back in. Leveling his starfighter so its nose was directly pointed towards the belly inside of the interdictor's hangar bay, Neve immediately fired every proton torpedo his X-Wing had in its arsenal, causing the entire Star Destroyer to explode from within, taking his life in the process. From the surface on Jezbina's capital, the explosion of the Star Destroyer was seen by everyone present. Motivated by the rebel pilot's sacrifice and using the brief distraction it caused to their advantage, the people charged at Vader's stormtroopers, taking out his detachment and leaving the Sith Lord standing alone before an entire city's population. Realizing the odds of survival were not in his favor, Vader conceded and left without a fight. Although some of the people still wished to attack him, the princess of the planet called for them to stand down, not desiring to see them be massacred, all for the potential capture of one man. Luke, on the other hand, began to cry. Not for the pilot, although he now believed Neve to be the true greatest pilot ever, but for himself. For the first time since becoming the hero of the rebellion, Luke felt that he was about to die. The invincibility that he had felt since destroying the Death Star was shattered when he truly believed he was going to be taken by Vader. It was a terrifying feeling, but one he was willing to experience again as he was doing it for the right reasons. That was the impact Neve ultimately had on Skywalker. The realization that he and others like him felt that fear too, but still continued to fight the evil in spite of it. Back on Coruscant, or the Imperial Center as it was known under the Galactic Empire, Emperor Palpatine met with the bounty hunter who had originally escaped Vader's massacre during his attempt to silence those regarding the knowledge of Luke Skywalker being the pilot who destroyed the Death Star. Amused at his apprentice's attempted deception, and the deception that he himself would return in kind by pretending he didn't already know, filled Palpatine with joy looking forward to the moment he would finally decide to reveal this all to Vader, whenever he deemed the opportunity the most amusing in their back-and-forth game as master and apprentice.